Hello and welcome to another lecture of the course Aquaculture. Today we are going to talk about pond management. Ponds, we have already discussed in the previous lecture what ponds are and how many types of ponds are there. When we are going to undertake fish culture on commercial scale, then we should manage the pond scientifically in order to get good profit or make it economically viable and sustainable. Ponds should be ponds used for exclusively for fish culture purpose are designed and require scientific management that we have discussed, that they are designed properly. And if we do this, then of course yield will increase. What fish pond management includes? Very briefly, I have talked about this in my earlier lecture on semi-intensive aquaculture. Restocking management, stocking management, and post-stocking management. Let's take one by one. We can discuss here in little bit detail. Pre-stocking management, that means before we have stocked the fish into the pond. So what kind of management is needed? When there is no fish in the pond, then what we do? In fact, these are the first steps that we have to do before starting the culture practice. First is drying and desilting. Dry the pond, desilt the pond, whatever, we will discuss it one by one. Then control and eradicate the aquatic weeds, eradicate the predatory or weed fishes which are present there, which are undesirable, which are you are not intending to culture. Control of aquatic insects. Then that pond should be fertilized if you are looking for natural food productivity. Drying and desilting. What happens that the pond should be drained completely. It is allowed to dry in the sun, and doing so, what happens that whatever silt is there, whatever organic load is there at the bottom, that may be having certain maybe parasite cysts or some other type of pathogens, some infectious agents that may harm the fish. So they are all destroyed. So the silt portion is removed from the dried pond. First it is sun dried, and then silt is removed, so that we remove many of the undesirable things. And pond water may become little deeper also by that way. So that was the first step that you have to take. Then we have to control or eradicate the aquatic weeds which are present. They are in fact very harmful, especially with regard to oxygen supply to the fish. Oxygen depletion may be there. They can restrict the fish movement. They can interfere with fishing operations and many other things. Gills may be choked, and when sunlight will be cut off, then primary productivity will also be hampered. So the aquatic weeds, in fact, weeds what we call which are undesirable plants. The plants which are undesirable, harmful to the fish or pond, they are called as aquatic weeds. So examples are free floating weeds, water hyacinth, Pistia, lemna. Emergent weeds like Nymphia, water lily. Submerged weeds like Hydrilla, Vallisneria, Potamegaton. Marginal weeds, Typha, Sagittaria. Filamentous algae, Spirogyra, Slatoria. These filamentous algae are very dangerous, very dangerous. You may overlook many times to these algae, but they are so dangerous. They choke the gills. Fishes are continuously taking water from the mouth and expelling it through the opercular region, gill region. And by doing so, sometimes these filamentous algae come and they choke the gills. And ultimately, the gills are choked so much that these fishes die of asphyxiation, of oxygen depletion. They are unable to exchange the gases, the respire. So, what are different methods to control the aquatic weeds? One thing is that you simply collect the aquatic weeds and throw it out of the pond. So, that is mechanical method that you can do: hand picking, uprooting, cutting, whatever convenient thing you find in removing the aquatic weeds. Another is, put some chemical inside so that all the aquatic weeds are removed or killed, and then they are removed. or biological method. Some you introduce some kind of fishes or other animals which can feed on these aquatic weeds. Weedicides, what we use in chemical method to remove the weeds. These are different weedicides that has been written here. I'm not going to read them one by one, but some of them I can tell you that teficide, hexamar, sodium arsenite, then copper sulfate that we have used also. That is very good in, especially we used copper sulfate in controlling algal bloom. That was working quite fine. And these are different doses which are given. So you can follow the doses of the weedicides and the type of weeds they are there to control, and stick to that only. Never overdose these chemicals in your pond. They are going to harm the entire environment. So whatever is recommended, use only that much, not more than that. Then there is biological method. It's always better to use biological method than going for chemical method if the things are not going beyond your control. If the things are going beyond your control, then you will have to use chemical method. But then you will have to empty the pond and prepare it again for the purpose. So depending on the conditions, you can take a decision. Biological method, what we do, we can use certain fishes which feed upon these aquatic weeds. For example, the most popular one is grass carp, which in fact can consume much quantity of these aquatic weeds, sometimes more than its own body weight. It can consume and show very good growth rate. So there are fishes like Cyprinus carpio, Grammy, then we have pearl spot, silver carp, grass carp. They all can help you one way or the other. But the grass carp is one of the best fish to control the weed infestation biologically. Now, predatory and weed fishes. When we are going for culture, say for example Indian major carps, Katla, Rohu, Mirgal, and if there are predatory fishes in that pond already, for example Vellegout 2, if that fish, Vellegout 2 is commonly known as Lachi or Padhan some places. So if such kind of a fish, which is commonly known as freshwater shark, the Vellegout 2 is also referred to as freshwater shark because of its hunting habit. So if some predatory fish is there, then that predatory fish will attack the desired fish species which you are stocking for your commercial interest. So that has to be removed. And if there are certain weed fishes which are undesirable, very small fishes, they do not fetch you good price in the market, but they are breeding in the pond, they are occupying the area, they consume the food which you offer to your fishes. So ultimately that will make your entire fish culture system very unprofitable and unsustainable. So you have to get rid of these predatory as well as weed fishes. So they can be removed through drag netting, or there are other methods also. But what we can do, we can remove these fishes or predatory fishes or weed fishes by biological methods also. There are certain biological materials which act as fish toxin, and but their effect remains for a defined time period. And after that time period, say for example here Derris powder is written about a week, mahua oil cake is written about 3 weeks. So after that period, the same thing may act as that. You will have to look for complete information, but that may act as manure to your pond after its toxic effect is subsided. Control of aquatic insects. Again, this is very important. A number of aquatic insects prey upon fish hatchlings and fry and also compete with them for food. In fact, all these management procedures, they are extremely important if you are going for nursing pond and rearing pond. There, especially in the nursing pond, these things are very necessary. In nursing pond, you cannot allow the aquatic insects to be there. They will feed upon fries like anything. The frogs, the snakes, and birds, and many other things. The aquatic weeds that we have just talked about. So every such thing should be avoided in order to increase the survival rate and growth of the fry, especially in the nursery pond. But in rearing pond also, that becomes very useful. Uh, the common insects predators are beetles, bugs, dragonfly nymphs. Beetles, there are many varieties of beetles and other aquatic insects which can harm your fishes. Other predatory insects of giant water bug, water scorpion, they are commonly found in many places. Dragonfly nymphs are highly predatory on carp spawn. I told you that in your nursery, nothing should be there. You should work on preparing the pond very well if you want to increase the survival percentage in your nursery pond, because the survival is the greatest concern in your nursery pond. Insects can be controlled by frequent netting with a small mesh net, but many insects can escape the netting. So you can, insecticides can also be used, but if you are using in the pond where fish or fry or spawn already stocked, then you will have to be very careful that how you are going to use, how you are going to save your fish. The most effective method for controlling applications insects is the application of mixture of soap and oil. 8 kg of soap and um, dissolved in hot water mixed with 25 kg of oil is enough for 1 acre of water. This mixture is sprayed over the surface of the water on windless days so that they stay there. They make a film over the surface. It can be used before and after the introduction of fries. Before and after the introduction of fries, because the emulsion does not harm fry and plankton. It will just make a film over the pond surface. So aquatic insects will die, but the fishes which live into the pond in the water column, they will not be harmed. The oily film formed on the water column chokes the respiratory tube of insects. It is effective for a few hours. So you can have different methods to control. Fertilization of the pond. The fertility of the pond can be increased by using organic or inorganic fertilizers. Then in fertilization of the pond, application of quick lime is usually the first step. First we apply lime in order to make the soil little alkaline, and then we use manure and inorganic fertilizers. And the dosage of lime depends on the type of soil we are having. Depending on the acidity of the soil, we can decide the dosage. For example, here if you have lower pH values, then you will have to use higher dosage of lime. And similarly, when you go to the higher pH values, then maybe you don't need to use lime. And then this is the first step while preparing the pond, especially when applying any kind of chemical into your pond for preparing it. Then pH of the soil is adjusted, and then we apply manure and inorganic fertilizer to support a large number of fry stock. Natural food production is necessary if we are going for in semi-intensive fish farming and carp culture, especially in countries like India, that is being done on semi-intensive scale in many parts of our country. So we need to enhance the primary productivity and secondary productivity, or in general, you can say that natural productivity of the pond for fish feed. Both organic and inorganic fertilizers are necessary to be incorporated, and it depends on what kind of inorganic fertilizers. Sodium nitrate, ammonium sulfate, ammonium nitrate, ammonium carbonate, etc. are used as inorganic fertilizers, but these are costly and sometimes bring about phytoplankton bloom and heavy growth of zooplankton. A combination of organic manures and inorganic fertilizers is considered more effective than using either of them alone. This is very necessary to use in combination in order to understand the utility of these inorganic and organic fertilizers. You will have to understand the nutrients required for photosynthetic activity. So you will have to provide the nutrients from which primary production can be increased. And when primary production will be increased, then of course secondary production in terms of zooplankton will also be increased. So these are the doses which have been given. Again, I should say to you that it may vary according to the condition that you are experiencing in your place, the water quality, the soil quality, the type of culture practice, the type of species you are having. Liquid manure from stables, guano or farm manure consisting of cow and pig dung are extensively used. Liquid manure you can also use, you can go for dried cow dung, it depends on the availability. And you can standardize, I think you should standardize the dosage according to your site requirement, your pond requirement. Sewage, if treated properly, that is also a source of good nutrients for the fish culture. If you visit to Kolkata, there we have sewage-fed fisheries. They are utilizing treated sewage for fish culture, and they are producing very good quantity of fish very successfully. A combination of superphosphate of lime, cow dung, and mahu oil cake has also been recommended to be used for increasing primary production. Then, as I told you that the dosage and how frequently you should use these manures and inorganic fertilizers, that depends on the conditions. You can standardize for your own site. Stocking management, procurement, pre-stocking we have talked, now stocking management. Procurement, transportation and stocking of quality fingerlings of different compatible species of fish ponds are the activities to be undertaken here. Rate of stocking generally depends on biological productivity of a pond and the amount of supplementary feeding that you can afford to feed. So, in fact, water quality is one of the very important parameters that is not written here, but I should say that water quality is something which should be considered first. Supply of water quality and the dissolved oxygen profile during the day and the water level that will remain in the pond for a longer period of time, how much water level you can ensure into the pond, and all other things, they will decide that whether you can use high stocking density or low stocking density. And depending on that, you will have to use organic manures and inorganic fertilizers to increase the natural productivity. What kind of natural productivity you are having in your pond, that depends on soil and water quality, based on which you will take a decision that okay, I am having good natural productivity, so I can have more of stocking density, and then that will reduce burden of supplementary feeding also, depending more on supplementary feeding. But depending on these conditions, you can decide the stocking density. Selection of species, again, that the area where you are living, first do the market survey, and then the kind of soil and water quality that you are having, what kind of the climatic conditions, the environmental conditions in that area, based on which you will have to take a decision on what species we should go for. For example, in the carp culture system, we have discussed briefly the 6 species, 5 species, 4 species culture system in semi-intensive also. But here you can see that how much of which fish has to be stocked, that is also given, that you can have a look on this also, that depending on whether you are going to utilize the surface by not only by katla but some other surface feeder, so you can introduce silver carp, or likewise for column and for bottom, you can have your own manipulation of species from Indian major carps and exotic carps. Both show very good growth rate. Exotic carps, especially grass carp, common carp, big-head carp, silver carp, they grow very well, but they fetch lesser market price compared to Indian major carps in Indian markets especially. Five culture system, this also we have explained earlier, and if you are not comfortable in meeting out the requirement of feeding or water or whatever requirement of any of these fish species, then you can remove one of these species and you can go for five species culture system. Then accordingly, four species culture system if there are certain limitations for one more species. And this three species culture system is very popular. Usually, if you don't have anything, just go for the three species culture system: Katla, Rohu, and Mirgal. Katla being on top, Katla being on the top at surface feeder, then Rohu in the column as column feeder, and then Mirgal at the bottom um, as bottom feeder. So you can go for this. Now, post stocking management. After fishes have been stocked, what we should do, how we can manage them scientifically in order to get good production. Many steps like feeding, periodic fertilization, pond environment monitoring, fish health monitoring, thinning and harvesting. Let's discuss one by one. Feeding, if you remember my previous lectures, I could have explained you that feeding is the most important input cost in aquaculture, in fish culture. So if we are able to manage feeding or minimize the cost in feeding, we can increase the profitability. After stocking the ponds, um, uh, the fry feeds voraciously. We all know that fishes grow at a very fast pace in the early stages of their life. So they require more food and more frequent food, not only more quantity in terms of their body weight, but they require to be fed many times in a day. So as this same case as in case of human babies, that they have to be fed frequently many times in a day, and the requirement, their dietary requirement with regard to percent of their body weight is more than the adults or older people. For proper growth, supplementary feeding is necessary. We are here in semi-intensive aquaculture. We are able to, provide natural productivity, but supplementary feeding is necessary for getting good growth rate. Supplementary feed should be digestible. These are, of course, very important points. Digestible, cheap. We go for locally available ingredients. They are usually byproducts, not the products which are directly being consumed by human beings. For example, I gave you example of oil cake and bran, rice bran or wheat bran. They are byproducts. They are not directly consumed by humans. So we can use these agricultural byproducts for making feed for these carps or fishes. So that will be cheap, easily digestible, readily available. That should be available, and readily available whenever you want, you get it, and have good nutritive value. This is very important. If you are not providing them nutritionally balanced diet, then everything is waste. A better survival can be obtained if both type of foods, both types, natural food as well as supplementary food, is available at the optimum level. For IMCs, a mixture of rice bran and mustard oil cake or groundnut oil cake, this has been very common in many parts of our country. That this is also referred to as traditional feed. In one of my research papers, I worked on the comparison of traditional feed and formulated feed on the growth and maturity of carbs. So traditionally, in many farmers, you will see that they provide 1:1 oil cake and rice bran or wheat bran, whatever they get, rice bran or wheat bran, and then any of the oil cake they get, they just mix in equal proportion and provide them as in the powder form only, mostly. And sometimes, depending on the condition, they may prepare some soft balls also, semi dried, you can say semi solid soft balls also, they can provide that also. So that is the common traditional practice. Supplementary feeding, however, what I should suggest that if you calculate the requirement, if you are able to meet the requirement, say for example, I told you that in the beginning you may be able to provide, you may be required to provide about 40% of crude protein in the diet of the fry. So if you are using 40% of crude protein, just there are very simple calculations. You can fix 40% of crude protein in the diet, and then using the locally available ingredients, you can prepare your 40% protein diet at your farm only. Then you provide that food to your fish. It will grow. It will show significant difference in growth rate. Spawn to fry, about 4 to 8 times of the initial body weight, but fry to fingerlings 50 to 100% of the initial body weight. Then growers 1 to 2% of body weight, broodfish 1 to 3%. It all varies according to the species and the conditions. So depending on the conditions, depending on the species, you will have to in fact work out what is the percent body weight requirement. This we call as ration size or ration level of that particular fish species. So that ration level need to be standardized for every species in different regions where the fish culture has to be practiced. Then, since we are here discussing mainly semi-intensive aquaculture, and we are depending on natural productivity as well, so that natural productivity needs supply of nutrients, and we will have to take care of the supply of nutrients in from through organic manure as well as inorganic fertilizers. So periodic supplementation of these manure and fertilizers is necessary. Pond environmental monitoring. In fact, when we are putting in so much into the pond water, when we have stocked moderately, high stocking density, in the pond, more number of fishes have been stocked, and when large number of fishes are stocked, then we are providing large quantity of food also to them, and then to get natural productivity, we are providing, putting in organic manure and organic fertilizers also into the pond. So ultimately, where everything is going into the water. So what is to be monitored first in a very proper manner, I told you earlier also, then water management is very necessary, which will keep your operation viable. So that should be, very properly managed, the pond environment, in fact, in terms of water. So water quality parameters are needed to be kept in check, and we should avoid providing, overdoses of anything, and we have to keep every parameter in check within the optimal range. What are commonly observed and measured: water color, water transparency, water level, pH, alkalinity, ammonia, dissolved oxygen. These are all very important, and in many documents you will get to see the desired water quality parameters which are needed for fish culture. For freshwater regions, you will find different parameters. For brackish water, for mariculture, you will find things different. Here, it has been shown that what should be the water color, test transparency, pH, and other things. It has been written here. And usually, what happens that if everything is going fine, then this dissolved oxygen problem is usually seen in the ponds. If every other thing is you are keeping in check, this DO becomes problematic, especially when during the cloudy conditions in morning hours, when because of the clouds there is not enough sunlight, and during the night oxygen has already been consumed, whatever was present in the dissolved form. So the oxygen now available to the pond fishes in the morning hours is not enough to for all the fishes. So what happens, in the early morning hours, the fishes may come up to the surface to gulp atmospheric air, and ultimately they may go upside down. And if you are not able to control promptly, then they may die. But if you see such a condition, what you have to do, you have to agitate water and spray some maybe dilute solutions of KMNO4 or something. And if aeration or some kind of, you just ask some people to swim into the water. If agitation will be there, then more atmospheric oxygen get dissolves into the system. Then fish health monitoring, daily observation of fish, that again we have discussed earlier also. If any kind of abnormality or irregularity in their swimming, their feeding pattern, their movement, you observe, or if they do not eat the food properly, then should be concerned and you should check it properly. Sampling and examination of fish at regular intervals. In fact, what we recommend that you should practice netting at frequent intervals, maybe fortnightly or so. You can go for netting, simply netting, not fishing, and observe the condition of the fish. Sampling and examination of the fish, onset of distress, disease outbreak or mortality that we can have. Then diseased fish may exhibit either both physical or behavioral signs. Here it is written. Behavioral signs: slowing down or a complete stoppage of feeding. They do not accept food usually. Loss of equilibrium, swimming erratically or in spirals. Then coming to the surface to gulp atmospheric air. Clinical symptoms: excess mucus secretion. When you hold the fish, then you can feel that. Abdominal swelling, the belly may get swollen. Bulging of eyes, presence of cyst or spores or patches, and appearance of lesions or hemorrhagic spots or ulcers. If you get fins may look frayed, or if you get any of these abnormal signs, or in simpler terms, if you have been observing your fish for quite some time, if any kind of abnormality is noticed, whether in behavior or clinical symptoms, then be concerned about and go to control that. Thinning and harvesting. Advanced fry of about 3 to 4 centimeter in size are netted from nursery ponds and released into rearing ponds that we have studied. When the fry in rearing ponds attain a size of 8 to 13 centimeter, they are transferred to the stocking pond. Rearing or stocking ponds are larger than the nursery pond that we have already discussed. Excessive growth of algae must be checked. The process of thinning, stocking, manuring and artificial feeding should be carried out time to time. What happens? The entire process of thinning and harvesting is that when the fishes grow in size, they may occupy more space. So when there are bigger fishes, take them out from nursery to rearing, from rearing to stocking, and from stocking to brood stock if needed. Thin the pond density, take them out to another pond, and if they are able to get harvested, then harvest them and sell into the market, or simply transfer to some other pond where they are needed. Large size full grown fish are harvested and transported to the market. So these were some of the steps that we have discussed, the steps required for pond management of in fish culture system. Hope you could have understood and enjoyed the lecture. Thank you so much.